All right, we are live. I'm so excited today for this. This is truly such an amazing opportunity. One, I'm excited to be able to do an interview, but in particular, and most of all, I'm so excited for who I'm talking to today. So this is Dan McCormick. Amazing. Say hi, Dan.
Hey, good day. Hope everybody's doing fantastic, and thank you for the invite today. It's going to be a great time.
So excited. Amazing in so many respects. So we met. Your daughter, Mackenzie, used to work for us for our business Mintero, which is our online business. Just an amazing human being. So I know we would do these team meetings and we would talk about favorite books. And so, Mackenzie, she would, say her favorite book, and then I would say something like, "Oh, I love Think and Grow Rich," or "I love How to Win Friends and Influence People." And she immediately said, "You need to talk to my dad."
Well, guess what? You're talking
I
to him
know.
now.
Little did I know how awesome and
Yeah.
amazing you are and what you have to share. Again, so excited. So for obviously, for anybody who doesn't know you, maybe just tell us kind of a little bit about yourself and kind of the origin of all things that you do.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with everybody. And, it's an interesting story. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. I was a young man. I had no self-esteem at all. I had very, very challenging abilities in learning in school. Very hard for me. ADD, ADHD. I had a very serious challenge with learning or really appreciating anything of any assignment, any class, until one day my mom taught me how to read the sports page. And I could look at statistics and they jumped off the page at me. Whether it was basketball team, I'd follow the Seattle Supersonics. We didn't have the Seattle Mariners at the time when I was like 12 years old. We had the Cincinnati Red Big Red Machine in the mid 70s. And so I'd follow all the box scores. I can tell you some of the statistics and percentages to this day.
That's incredible.
It's pretty crazy. So I literally never really read maybe 2-3 books my entire time in school. But I got out of school and I went to Washington State University to play on the tennis team. I had a bug playing tennis, played all over the Pacific Northwest, had a chance to work for professional tennis players. I went to Washington State University. I always ask live studio audiences if they could raise their hand if they've had a college experience. And so if you're listening today, I say, if you had a college experience, raise your hand. And I say, well, I finished in just 2 weeks' time at Washington State University. What most people would call that dropping out, but I needed a way to look at it positively. Gotcha. And so I finished college in 2 weeks' time. I get a reckless driving ticket going home. I worked at this tennis club making $2.35 an hour. After 3 years, I was up to $3.65 an hour, the Seattle Supersonics Racket and Health Club. And then an individual who I always looked up to walked up to me and violated my airspace. You know when people get stoked? A little too close, right? And he's like literally right in my face. And he said, "Dano, I need a laborer this summer. I'll pay you $5 an hour." And I thought, whoa, that's a heck of a pay raise for me. So I had to take that, right? I'm 16, 17 years old. I go start building tennis courts and never had done physical labor in my life. So we're talking like 55-gallon drums of material, huge mixers, putting it in barrels. And I came home every day the color of your tennis court. Like if it was blue and green, I came home blue, green, beige, blue, beige, green, whatever, red, green. And so I had this incredible boss, and they were partners. There was two of them. They're both top tennis players in the Northwest. And they taught me the value of integrity. They taught me how to work. They taught me how to be on time. They taught me how to do everything with better than anything the client would ever expect. And so that was the beginning for me. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be a mission-driven entrepreneur. That word wasn't used so much back in the, 1981, 82, 83 timeframe. But when I got back from that, my second summer building tennis courts, there was this ad that jumped out at me on the Seattle Times newspaper. And the ad said, "Are you making what you're worth?" And I can see it to this day. I can read it to you this day. It says, "I live in Beverly Hills, California. I drive a Claney," which was a fancy car back in the 80s.
Okay.
And I made $96,000 in the last 6 months in the health and nutrition business. And that says supervisory positions available. Neil, I was so afraid to call that ad. I was shaking. I was sweating. I had no business background. I had no self-esteem, no self-worth. I certainly didn't have any net worth. And the ad showed up in the paper 4 days in a row.
Wow.
And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, they must be desperate because the ad's still in the paper. And I finally got the courage to call it. And it was an answering service day where the lady took my name and number. I can still remember her voice. And she took my name and number. And this man called me back the next day named Dennis. And he says, My name is Dennis, and I know you called on my ad in the newspaper. Can you tell me a little bit about your business background? So I said, Look, I build tennis courts, I string tennis rackets, I do whatever you can do in a tennis club. And he could tell I was struggling.
Love
And
it.
he says, Why don't you meet me at 11 a.m. tomorrow at the Greenwood Inn off Northeast 8th in Bellevue, Washington? I remember what I was wearing. I can remember the topsider shoes, the jeans, the tennis shirt. I had hair down to my shoulders at the time. And for
Amazing.
those that are are listening to a
It's a
podcast,
little different now.
a little different
It
now.
looks great.
It's a clean cut,
It is.
right? So I went to that meeting, and this individual started telling me about how I could dream and how I could build my own business. Long story short, I met my wife in that business.
Amazing.
I'm 19 years old, and we got married 8 months later.
Wow.
And we were able to pass our first $1 million in income when I was 22 years of age.
Amazing.
It was truly a dream, being at the right place, the right time, the right mentors. And so here I sit today, and we can dive in deeper into the more of the story if you like.
I love that. So literally, which this blows my mind because I'm sitting in front of you. I know you for who you are. I know Dan, like amazing, charismatic. I mean, there's so many words that I would use to describe you, like visionary. So when you say like you struggled with self-esteem, you
Yeah.
struggled with ADHD, some of these things, like at this point, that's really hard for me to even fathom. I'm like, I wouldn't even be able to recognize you in that state. So clearly a lot of things happened in your life to get you to where you are now, where you've just released a book that's just amazing. We'll talk about that. And I think one of the things that you referenced as well, kind of leading up to where you are now, is there was like a 10-year period for you that of essentially struggle, feeling like you were sliding backwards.
Yeah.
And that eventually led you to writing the book that you recently released.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit about like what was that struggle for you? Was this kind of after the initial successes that you found in your business, or was that kind of earlier on? When did that happen?
I'll kind of piece it together like this, because when I was 19 and I had finished college in 2 weeks, when I went to that first business meeting, there was a gentleman that held this book up, and he was a real estate agent from Calgary, Alberta, which is where my wife is from. And he told me that his life was completely messed up because interest rates at the time in 1982, 3 were 17, 18, 19% up there.
Wow.
So as a real estate agent, you couldn't sell a lot of houses. And his life had fallen out of control. His partners left him. He was left holding the bag of the debt. And he moved into a little half duplex with his wife and 2 kids. And he answered my wife's ad in the newspaper.
Wow.
1 week after finding this book in his garage. He had previously read The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. For people listening today,
Amazing book.
we're talking about tens of millions. You and I have shared a lot of passion about
Yes.
each other's journey with reading this and how we read it and when it showed up in our lives. And so the book that came to me was the journalized version. So when Og wrote this in 1968, The Greatest Salesman in the World, there's 10 ancient scrolls in that book. Well, the journalized version is just an idea that Og inspires you or challenges you to read the scrolls 3 times a day, and the evening one, read it aloud. We'll come back to that. Don't let us forget why we come back to that. And then I did that. I wrote my goals down. I can even show them to you right here.
This is amazing. I've never seen this version, by the way. This is so cool.
Yeah. So I write down my job title, my income weekly,
Wow.
and what I want it to be in 45 weeks when the 10 scrolls are done. And so you can see I far exceeded my goals. And so I was told that leaders are readers, and yet I was a really bad reader. So it kind of intimidated me. But when Og wrote that book, he wrote that book from a paradigm of an addict. And I didn't know it. I'm reading this book like it's the greatest salesman in the world.
Gotcha.
But he came at it from the standpoint that he was an alcoholic.
Which I had no idea until you shared this story
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah. And you read the book many times, your brother, right? The whole family.
Yeah.
So Og is staring at a pawn shop window in the mid 60s in Cleveland, Ohio on a rainy, cold night, and he sees a gun in the window. He figures he has a soggy $20 bill in his pocket. He could pull that $20 bill out. He could buy that gun. He could get that bullet, and he could end it all. And then he looked down the street, and he saw a light, and a door was open, and it was a library. And so he thought, I'll go in there because it's warm. And he went into the library, went into the self-help section, which back in the day, that's a little different, right? You don't think of self-help back then. I mean, you know, now this section is
pretty
large.
big, a lot going on, but it probably took a little bit of work to find that.
Probably, right? And so he finds W. Clement Stone, who at the time was one of the major insurance companies in the country. And W. Clement Stone was a huge kind of fan of self-help, wrote books about it, motivational speaker, all those things. Og found him, and he hired Og to be an insurance salesman in the Boston area. And he then became the editor-in-chief of Success magazine a few years later. Og did.
Wow.
And his whole life changed. And here he has books that have sold tens of millions of copies. And so back to your question about the plateau, like I really am big on the idea that if I was showing people in like a chart pattern right now, I would draw the bottom left and I would draw this squiggly line to the top. And I always look at what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
Right? And so what had to change in my life was being a reader. Readers are leaders. And then here I sit 40 years later, my wife and I, we love where we live. You know, my daughter just lives a few miles from you guys here. And so I'm sitting on this plateau and I'm like just aching to get out of this flat spot. Kind of, you know, I always like to say that if you're not moving forward, you're essentially going backwards.
Yes.
And I went to a convention and I walked in and my assistant had this book for sale on the counter with a journal. It's called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. So man, I gave her the $50. I bought the journal. I bought the book. I went home from that convention on a Sunday night and I watched his documentary. He talks about having a head-on collision, talks about 11 broken bones, maybe permanent brain damage. Jeez. He was pronounced dead for 6 minutes. And so he's writing this book and he creates this idea of how to have this miracle morning. And so I started that Monday morning just 2 years ago. So that would have been what, 2022, September. I cannot even tell you the adrenaline that was surging through my body. I felt like this was the answer to my prayer of how do I get off my plateau? And so I'm an adrenaline guy. And so the adrenaline hit me and I've got thousands of people's names in my phone. And I just kept calling people. Have you heard of Miracle Morning? Have you heard of Miracle Morning? Have you heard of Miracle Morning? And then I started calling people, including Andrea Waltz, who's the co-author of Go for No. She just texted me this morning. And I'm like calling everybody I can saying, who knows Hal Elrod? Finally, she was probably my 50th call. And she says, I don't know how, but I know who does. Oh, and that's so cool in life when you can find the who.
Those connections.
Yeah. So sometimes it's the who, not the how. I don't know what challenge, what plateau people might be on today that are listening, but there's a who out there. And maybe it's this message and how it changed me. And so I met Hal. He came on my show and we had thousands of views. I hired him to come and speak to our company and that just lit up the audience. And then I said, Hal, I'm writing this book. I said, would you write the foreword? He says, of course. And so here we sit today and now my entire world has changed. Like there's such an optimism of this frequency to my life that I know there's people out there every day that I can share this message with in this book that I just wrote with my co-author, Ken Shelton, that I'm holding in my hand right now that is called Awakening Who I Am.
Love it.
And when you say that I am, it's the subtitle is the 2 words that ignite transformation. And so I'm just really excited for whoever might be listening that needs that ignition switch turned on.
I'm so excited to talk about that too. And going back to the greatest salesman in the world, we talked about this initially. We had a phone call back in 2020.
Exactly.
And you brought up the greatest salesman in the world. And it's actually in our first podcast episode, there's a clip where it's actually the talk I gave at my brother's funeral. And I quote from the second scroll where it's, I will greet this day with love in my heart from the book. But my brother actually is a real estate agent, loved this material. I think that's why I connected with you so quickly, is because you reminded me of all of the things that he would share with me and teach me that really shifted and changed my life. So one of them was the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. So he would do what you're talking about with the morning affirmations, wake up early, meditation, and then carry that with him into the day, and then end with the closing scroll to make sure, and it's got to be read aloud. We talked about that.
Yep.
and he was one of the top salesmen at top real estate agents at his brokerage.
Wow.
And a lot of people really respected him. But so when we had that conversation, that really impacted me and kind of perked my ears on just all of the things that you've embraced and really done in your life to get to where you're at. And so I love this concept, and we've talked about this. I've shared open. We talk a lot about it on our podcast, being a part of the recovery community. Going to 12-step meetings. We've actually talked at a 12-step meeting. And you mentioned this concept of I am and explained it a little bit to me. And so maybe if you wouldn't mind, kind of share that, like why is that so important, or why is there so much power behind I am?
Yeah, it's an incredible question because it's ancient language. It's the two words that ignite transformation. I means exist, am means with God. So what follows I am follows you. And so we wrote the book from the paradigm, Ken Shelton and myself, from the paradigm of Hafiz says, the great poet Hafiz says, the words we use become the house we live in. And so when most people listen today, they're probably going to agree with you and I that words are important, right?
Totally.
If you're goal setting or if you're mindful of getting things done, well, think about what the world is caught up in. The majority of the world is, right? I am sick. I am tired. I am lazy. I am not pretty. I'm not overweight. All these things that are what we call defamations. So we want to erase those right now. And we want to incorporate the great, I love Bruce Lee because I grew up in Seattle.
Love Bruce Lee.
Okay, so we all know Bruce Lee, right?
Karate.
Here's this incredible actor in these amazing movies. He's known as the greatest Jeet Kune Do karate guy of all time, so to speak. And he has this phrase, and it says, don't even joke about yourself. When you say stuff, don't even joke about it because your body doesn't know the difference.
Love that.
That's why we call it spelling. You cast a spell. You're prescribing what you want in your life. If you want to jump off the plateau in your life, we write 7 specific affirmations in the book to help you do that. We start with a meta affirmation. And the meta affirmation comes from the Old Testament, and that is in Exodus 15:26, I believe it is. And it says, I am the Lord that healeth. So let's start with a meta affirmation because each one of the affirmations in the book, we use a story. It could be our friend Xander, right? There's a $500 a day opiate addict who's been on your show.
He has been on our podcast. He's really amazing story, which you reference in the book.
We have a great story on him. Got a story of one of my daughters, not Mackenzie, who you know, but Crystal was diagnosed with a disease that only 1,000 people in the country have.
Wow.
Every day she'd wake up not knowing if she could see, hear, or even think. It's a disease called Susac.
Crazy.
Unbeknownst to me, Neil, she's doing I am affirmations in the private quietness of her room. She didn't want any negativity. She didn't want to think about other people's possibility of not healing from the disease. So she dialed in only on I am affirmations and used sound waves and all kinds of other things along the way. But when you think about I am, what's so fascinating is we start off the book with each and every morning. I got to share this concept because there's something called neurogenesis. Have you ever heard of that term before?
I have not, actually.
It's a really cool word that I hadn't either until I was writing the book. And so every morning when you wake up, your brain is giving birth to new brain cells while you sleep. And so that's called neurogenesis. We didn't know this years ago, but maybe it's important to know what are the first thoughts. You know, is it like I remember watching different people because I would work at like 5, 6, 7 in the morning at the tennis club and see how they started their day. Well, I start my day off by using Og's words in The Greatest Salesman in the World and my affirmations in my book. And I start off by saying, I am nature's greatest miracle. That's Og's 4 scroll. You talked about your brother being really high on scroll 2, which was really near and dear to my heart because I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to feel love. I didn't know how to affirm love to somebody else. But when Og says, I will greet this day with love in my heart, muscle can split a shield and even destroy life. But only the unseen power of love can open the hearts of men and women. And until I master this art, will I remain no more than a peddler in the marketplace. So my first I am affirmation was just 3 months in with Og. And it's, I am nature's greatest miracle. And I tell the story in the book about that. And so I started doing I am affirmations, I guess, when I was 19 years of age. And here I am at 61 years of age, just putting out this book that'll give people a pathway to explode off the plateau. Now, let me back up just a bit. Og tells you at the beginning of his book, he gives you 75 to 1 odds that you'll even do the scrolls. And then he says, would you follow a system that could double or triple your income in the next year or so? And I say, I 10x'd my life by writing the book. Virtually every category of my life 10x'd. Like I told you the other day when I came over to drop the book off, right? It just was amazing. The people, the stories, the relationships, the financial rewards. So I like to tell people that the qualitative aspect of your life can begin changing right now. And that's when you say, I am a creator. That's the first affirmation in the book. You start every day as the creator of your own. You have your own landscape. You have your own, map to paint, your own piece of art to draw on, whatever that proper phrasing would be. And so I wake up every day saying, I am nature's greatest miracle. And then on my coin, which we'll talk about more a little bit later on.
So cool. Yeah, this is so awesome.
I like because you taught me this when I came to the addiction recovery program.
Yeah.
You recognize people.
We pick up chips for lengths of sobriety.
Exactly.
And so this looks like literally a chip that you would get for sobriety, but it has the affirmations.
Yes. And so
cool.
For me, I don't have a chip. I just go to support Xander and you and everybody else. And I just, like, I've done other podcasts when the podcast host looks at me and says, let me get this straight. You go on a Wednesday night and you're not an addict. But really, I'm an addict for people. If I'm not with people, I'm feeling the urge to be with people.
Yeah.
But I made my own chip. And so it says, I am a magnet for miracles on one side, and then the 7 affirmations on the other with the I am statement. What's interesting about that, Einstein says that you either have one of two paradigms. You either believe that everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle.
Wow. Love that.
What happens if you wake up every day and you believe it's always a miracle and that there's people on your path that are going to change your life? You're going to begin by vibrating at a higher level because your words, right, have vibrational energy. And when you say, I am a creator, and then my second affirmation is, I am intentional. So I start each and every morning with this notion of the book, the coin. I have a journal that I write in. And I can just go through all 7 of these affirmations, but I don't want to get in the way of maybe a question along the way here.
Yeah. No, I love this. And so literally, this is how you shifted, how you attracted success initially and kind of rewired things and created this opportunity in your life, found success there. And then hitting a plateau, this is how you did it.
Yes.
Is you created these mornings where you're intentional, you're waking up, you're doing these affirmations, which all of this has been pretty well documented. I mean, you've got scientific studies, you've got so much data out there. I think there's an element in the majority of the literature that's out there that speaks to this. The 12 steps.
Yep.
Step 11, sought through meditation and prayer to improve our conscious contact with God, and pray for the power to carry out his will in our lives. I mean, this is, Bill and Bob, who the founders of AA, they understood this. This is a truth. This is a principle.
Back in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
1930s,
1930s during the Depression.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of alcoholics trying to get sober, helping each other. And so they understood, coming from these Christian Oxford groups that they'd been attending, and then they eventually developed the 12 steps from that. So step 11 is a key part of the 12 steps. So I love it. This makes so much sense to me. And one question I do have, I think a lot of people, there can be, and I felt this before. I remember taking a college course, and one of the books that we were told to read was like What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. I got kind of a funny look when I bought it.
Dad Helmstetter.
The cashier was like, "Hey, are you okay?" Like, I was like, "Hey, no, I'm good." But some of these exercises initially for me were really uncomfortable. It was like, go to the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself, like very honestly. And I'm like, I feel so silly. And I almost didn't want to do it. Like I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. I'd never done that before, honestly. And it was really weird and awkward. Like, so I don't know. My question is like, why is there such a struggle when it comes to, I can tell my kids they're great all day. I can talk to you and be like, Dan, you're amazing. I see it. But when it comes to ourselves, why is that so hard? Why is it so hard for people to go like, I'm great. I am this. I am that. And instead have these defamations as you talked about.
Right.
Why is that struggle so hard?
So we have this computer chip, right? We wake up every day. We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Almost every day, they're almost the same.
Wow.
So we have to be able to find a way to shift. Like, how are we going to break the plateau? How are we going to be so intentional, like I said, with the second affirmation in the book? And then that third one is to be present. And so when you tie all these things together and you change that vibrational energy, like for me, I can't wait for 4:45, 5:15 in the morning, because that's when I want to, like, I don't have what they would say, mind over mattress is my thing. Like my mind is ready to get over this, right? Let's get on with this day. And so I get pretty fired up about it. And I know that everybody's got different schedules that are full. But the answer to your question is the epidemic of our day. And it's this thing in my hand called a phone.
Yeah.
And when we open that phone, we are going down the wrong rabbit hole. So here's something I can't wait to see the comments on the stream here when you post the podcast, because this is one of the most powerful phrases you will ever hear in your life. And if people are listening today and you have your journal open, I would write down flow before phone.
I love that.
You flow before phone. In other words, let's get into the affirmations. And I'll get into the 18-minute affirmation special guided meditation video I made for me that I share with everybody. But if you phone first and you go to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, LinkedIn, any of the social media platforms first, whoa, now you're in recovery mode.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at comparison. You're looking at what other people are doing with their highlight reel of their life. Better to be the highlight reel of your own life and to turn off all notifications on that phone. And the only thing I turn on first thing in the morning for me on my phone is I created for me an 18-minute affirmation video. And I think you remember when I shared it. I did share.
I actually have done this. It's super cool.
Yeah. So here's why I did it. Most people are familiar with a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. So in that book, I'm in the middle of writing my book, and I'm revisiting James Clear's book. I'm kind of almost done with my book. And this quote just jumps off the page at me, and it says, in order to write a great book, you have to become the book. He quotes Naval Ravikant, a famous multi-billionaire businessman from the Bay Area, if I recall. And so I thought, wow, I need to go a whole nother level. I'm writing a book about affirmations. I need to go deeper. So I asked my videographer to make me an 18-minute or to make me an affirmation video. And I used the 7 affirmations in my book. It's got certain sounds. It's got certain, ocean sounds, outside wind, and
very peaceful.
Peaceful. That's a good word. And I turned on that affirmation video, and I would ask our listeners today, what's the chance that you're all in for 18 minutes? The mind, it's tough to quiet the mind. But as you said in step 11, we've got to quiet the mind. We've got to get settled and put the words in that are going to get us to where we want to go. And so I started doing this affirmation, and 18 minutes felt like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And now 18 minutes feels like 7 minutes, 12 minutes. It's like, I can't wait, because I trust that there's 1% of my day that I can give. And that's 18 minutes, approximately 18 minutes is about 1%.
Yeah.
It's also 18 holes of golf. I'm a golfer.
So that's a great quote.
I like that tie-in.
Yeah.
Average TED Talk is about 18 minutes. But I was doing a podcast earlier this year rather, and this gentleman reached out to me on Messenger. And he says, how did you know to make this 18 minutes? He says, I come from the Hebrew background. And in Hebrew, 18 means life. He says, you may have just changed my life.
That's amazing.
Isn't that cool? So here we sit today with a free version of 18 minutes for people on my website or on my YouTube channel. We have a coin that's a couple dollars, a book that's a couple dollars. So we try to stack all these ideas and go through them with intention every day. So why don't I just do a quick overview of the 7 and then let's talk more about them. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So we think about I am a creator. Not only do I say it, listen to it, but I also write it and I feel it.
Gotcha.
I put my hands over it. Great author named Bob Proctor, who was the world expert for Think and Grow Rich. He was interviewing Price Pritchett, who wrote just this remarkable book called U Squared. And Price said in U Squared, he said, if you're ever going to doubt something, doubt your limits.
Love that.
But then he said, when you write your goals down, feel them. And I thought, wow, I gotta deepen my conviction to I am a creator. So I feel it. And then I write down, I am intentional. I do this on Sundays.
Gotcha.
In the book, we call this Creation Sunday. Most people think Monday's the first day of the month, of the week. It's Sunday.
Sunday.
So Sunday's Creation Sunday, we call it. And then I go, I am intentional. I am present. And we have a mutual friend that I feature in the book named Amanda.
Yes.
And I did her podcast not long ago. And so she's a remarkable mission-driven entrepreneur. This is a highly talented lady. And she was on my podcast years ago called The Greatest Salesman. And she said, I am present because I am prioritizing.
I love that.
Oh,
amazing.
So, I mean, you can just see why she's this iconic leader in her space, right? And so that's the third affirmation in the book, is to be present. Like I ask myself right now, here I am sitting with you in your fabulous studio for making.
It's pretty high tech.
It's high tech, right? It's high tech. It's high touch.
It's not, but thank you. Yes.
But I ask myself, am I truly present? Am I all in? And I want to be. I want to be able to reach out to the people that are listening, because you don't know when someone's going to hear a podcast 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years from now.
Absolutely.
No matter when it is you hear this, if you incorporate this, I promise you your life will change. It may even 10x in rapid time, qualitatively, and then the quantitative. If you are a mission-driven entrepreneur and you're listening and say, I want to make more money, I want to add another comma behind the commission check or whatever it might be.
And this is for everything. This isn't just like a success in business or obviously 100% that's going to apply to these principles. But I love how you said 10x your life.
Yeah.
So it's me and I think in the book you speak to that quite a bit. Like, what type of person do I want to be? How do I want to show up for people? Am I loving others? How do I want to visualize and create that in this creation phase? I am a creator.
Yes.
This is where you do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love you referencing that too, because when you say that over and over and over, the creative juices of your life are going to change. Like, it is just a beautiful thing to think that maybe there's a mother listening right now, like one of my daughters that had Lyme disease.
Totally.
And they're going, how can I be a mom? How am I going to find time, energy, strength to be the mom I want to be? You keep asking the right questions. The quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask and the affirmations you repeat. So when you think I am a creator, you think I am intentional, and you say I am present, watch what happens with number 4. This is fascinating in the book. When you say I am worthy, you get to work your way through that. And when you say I am worthy of forgiveness, of success, of love, of joy, of health, of beauty, all of these things, every single person listening right now is just as worthy, deserving, and capable as anyone on the planet for what they want to achieve. And you have to stack that every day, because the world will beat you down. As you and I, when we go to an addiction recovery meeting, we know that people are, their circle sometimes isn't maybe the right support group, right? That's why we have sponsors. Yeah. And you have to read the right materials. And I think I want to just say right now, this is real work.
100%. Yeah.
This is what Cal Newport talks about in his books, deep work.
Yes.
When you invest in deep work, there is no end to the blessings that can flow into your life. If you flow before phone and start stacking all of these ideas, I like to say that your self-worth, I am worthy, is more important than your net worth.
I love that. And I think that's something that the I am worthy, I just see so many people struggle with that. That's such a personal battle. And I think to some degree, want to generalize, but I think most people will at some point struggle with that one. But I'm sure there's been moments for myself, and I know for others, where it's like, I can't even say that right now. Like I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good. I'm not making good choices. I'm not, whatever it is. And maybe there's factual things that I'm looking at. I'm going like, well, I wrecked my life. I wrecked my family. I did, all these things. We hear these stories in recovery all the time. And so to be able to push past that, I mean, this, from my experience, and like I said, saying these things in the mirror, back when I did something similar, like that's an obstacle. But if you can push past that discomfort, and as you've worked with people, how do you get them through that? Like if it's like, I can't even say that because I don't feel great about myself.
Okay, let's put some stuff on paper here that'll really make a difference in that area. So if you take your present, okay, and the way to make your present better is to make your future bigger.
I love that.
Like get crystal clear on what you're going to do, what you're going to become. Are you going to operate from your future self? Now, if I make myself crystal clear, the afterword of my book is written by Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Yeah.
He wrote the book, Be Your Future Self. He wrote 10X is easier than 2X. And so to have Dr. Ben be introduced to me, thanks to Hal Elrod, it's, again, somebody I didn't know when I was writing the book. My co-author I didn't know. I didn't know Hal. So all of these things started to happen with the I am affirmations. And so make your present better by making your future bigger. Write it down. Get crystal clear on how you're going to operate from your future self. Now watch what happens. If you do that, this is where forgiveness comes in, because then you can look at your past. And historically in the world of organizational psychology, maybe 100 years ago, we wouldn't look at it like this, because all we would look at is our past and our present. But to look at our future and then to operate from our future in the present, we look at the past and say, I can forgive that person. Maybe I was in that business transaction that cost me a lot of money. That hurt. That person really did me wrong, but that happened for me, not to me.
Wow.
You change that paradigm. Now we have a presence. And then we look at that future every day and operate from that future every day. You want to build a great company. You want to build a great family. Yeah. Look, Covey taught me a long time ago that when you're raising your kids, you're raising your grandkids. So what kind of things do you want your kids to know that are so ingrained habitually? He did the 7 habits. And of course, we're talking about 7 affirmations. And so all of these things come together. And hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're in that space of pain and hurt and angst and frustration and sadness and disappointment, you can change it all by making your future bigger.
So you're creating this. So literally and it's an inspirational process to where you're tapping into like the eternal self, the highest and best self.
Yeah.
To where, and you speak to this in your book, to where you're looking at these things that are of most importance and highest value that essentially are coming from God. And giving, he's giving you this picture of who you are. So you're projecting that into the future. You're kind of writing that type of person you want to be. And then at that point, you're living from that reference point.
100%.
And that changes and maybe reframes your past as far as things that happened and why they happened. I love that aspect too, of like seeing it from that perspective. I think it takes people, and it's taken me out of that victimhood of like, man, all this stuff happened to me,
right?
And it switches it. This maybe this happened for me. Maybe this was something that I went through that now my life is infinitely better, and I can help people around me at a higher level that I never would have imagined before when I was going through this stuff. But I love how taking this time to really create that, look into the future and carve out who I want to be. And I love that it's not, because we think of vision boards, we think of things, maybe material like a house or a car or whatever. But I think the idea of who do I want to be, who am I? And that's why I love the I am part of this, being able to create that essentially with God, right? If I'm understanding
100%.
that right. And so you're creating this individual. So really, really powerful stuff. I mean, this is how we create things in our lives and effectively who we become.
Yeah. And it's powerful. And what's so cool about it, it's 2 words. Like
Yeah,
anybody can do
simple.
this. Like my grandkids do this with me. I play games with my grandkids. We write goals with my grandkids, and it always starts I am. What does I mean?
Yes.
Exist. Am means with God. What follows I am follows you. Where do I get these ideas? How do I read more about it? Go to my book, Awakening Who I Am. 2 words to ignite transformation. I just love the word ignite, and I love the word transformation. Paul said in Romans 12:2, be ye transformed by the
Gotcha.
renewing of your mind.
Love that.
So when you renew your mind, when Paul introduces himself, he says, I am Paul. I am Dan, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we get to, that transformation comes from inspiration. And you're exactly spot on if the listeners today can truly operate from their future self. It took me, I'm now 2.5 years into this process almost. And I can tell you, I've never been more excited about the steps in my life and the things that I've been able to replace thoughts with from the past and be more present and operate from my future. It's a powerful thing.
That is amazing. I love that. So so much here. I literally listened through the book, and I'm like, there's just so much goodness. And I think you reference any amazing self-help book I've ever listened to. Literally, I'm like, I think you just hit all of them. And so it's really, really powerful, how you put all this together. So maybe kind of one last question that I have for you, like distilling everything down. And we always kind of, end with this question is like, if there's one thing that you want the listener to walk away with today, if there's one message, what would that message be that you would want them to capture?
Yeah. So the last 3 that I didn't mention is I am capable, I am compassionate, I am a finisher. Okay, so when you think about the first 3 affirmations, it's creator, intentional, present. Worthy sits right in the middle.
Love it.
It is what we would call the hinge point. It's the keystone, if you will, that support all these others. And when you think about it, if there was one thing I could hope and pray for every listener to grab onto, it's that they feel worthy.
That's amazing.
There's a story of a lady in the book. Matter of fact, I was just texting her on the way here. Her name is Kim, and she did a small study with women. She wanted to create a clothing company, and she did a study with women on what are their feelings, what are they missing in their life, and most of the study came back, and she had all these options for them to answer. Most women did not feel worthy, beautiful, and loved. So she makes pajamas, and on the inside it says, "I am worthy, I am loved, and I am beautiful." It touches your skin while you sleep. And so if there was one hope for me, it's that when you read the book, you become my co-creator, my co-partner, co-author, as you know in the first page.
Yeah.
I ask everybody to be my co-author. I set the whole book up so that you can sign that first page, be my co-creator in writing down those affirmations, and let's get on with living the best life you have to live. Use those talents, the beauty that you have, the creativity that you have, and then it just all comes together when you just stick with it with that 1% a day. Find 18 minutes for the affirmation video. Find a few minutes every day to read the affirmations. And I just hope that everybody can feel just as worthy, deserving, and capable as anyone else on the planet for their success in their life.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Amazing.
I'm
that's all I
honored.
can say.
It's
Amazing.
just an honor to be here.
So where can people find you if they want to follow along, if they want to learn more about what you do or your book? Where can they find you?
Well, we do a free masterclass once a month for everybody that wants to learn more about I am affirmations. So they can go to my website and go to affirmim.com, AFFIRM, affirmim.com. And they can leave their email address in there, and we'll just email them once a month, and we'll just tell them, hey, here's our free masterclass. It's Saturday morning, third Saturday of the month, 7 a.m. It's also recorded. If that doesn't work for you, we mail it out the following week. And when you go to affirmim.com, put your email address in there. You can get access to our coin. We did an I am affirmation video specifically for worthiness as well. It's only 7 minutes long. It's on our YouTube channel, which is @affirmim. And hopefully people will, I'm pretty easy to find. Dan McCormick, Facebook, X, you name it.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
so this is an opportunity to, like, if you're struggling to reframe, to reshift, to rewire some thinking, some, things in your life to create to 10X, who you are, the best of, who you can be, what you have to offer. And I love that. I love the core I am worthy that is so incredible.
Feels good.
This has been so good. I've noticed just for myself personally, as I've listened, I like to, you have an amazing voice. So I've listened to your book, and there's something about hearing so much positivity and changing that negative talk. It just feels completely different. And so this has been so great. Thanks for coming on today, and for sharing. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank your audience. Thank your friends, your family for the time, and look forward to connecting with them all.
Fantastic.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Dan.
much, Neil.
Thanks so much for listening to Mint Arrow Messages. We're so grateful that you spent time with us today. Make sure you go follow us at Corinne Stocco or at Mint Arrow Messages on Instagram. And then if you have a second and you love the show, I would love it so much if you'd leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the only way people can find out about us if they haven't heard about us before. So just go tap the stars, leave a rating or a review. If you have a second, we would appreciate it so much.